way to Vietnam. Then he'll pick up Vietnam. And this is World War I. Who's the president? Anybody got an idea who was our president when we entered World War I? Who? Wilson? Woodrow Wilson. He's got it.
I was thinking of World War II. Show off. I wouldn't expect it. Yeah.
Okay. This was called the 1st Infantry Division for what reason? I'll tell you what happened here. This is the 1st division-sized unit in the Army, hence the name, the 1st Division. And we didn't form up until 1917. Well, the First World War had started in 1914. So here we are. We had held off Woodrow Wilson, held us off. He was a quiet man. He had just lost his wife, but he was a quiet man. And he didn't want us to get involved in this war in Europe. But in fact, we wouldn't even know what side we're coming in on until almost 1970. And then we come in on the side of the Allies. What they call the Triple Entente, which was Britain, France, and Russia, of all places. Russia, we call the Triple Entente, and the Germans and Austria-Hungary soldiers were called from the Central Powers, And we got into this war because they had somebody in the German Foreign Office had sent a telegram, and in the telegram, what it said was that if we win this war, it went to Mexico, of all places, Mexico, and of all places, and if they would win the war, meaning they would win the war, they'd be given Texas, Central Arizona, New Mexico, and half of California. Now, that inflamed people when they heard about it. So we had to get into this war. And we sent, at any one time, we sent 1.5 million soldiers from America into this war to be trained, because we weren't ready for this war. We didn't even have uniforms for most of the guys on the boats who were taking them over the years. We didn't have any weapons either. We had to borrow. The French were our mentors. The French were our mentors. We were assigned to France as opposed to Great Britain, but we had no weapons. So we had to borrow weapons from the French, the British, and what we could pull out of the heap from casualties. So anyway, we were called the Doughboys. We were called the Doughboys. We don't know how that started. Nobody knows how that started, but we were the Doughboys. Now, the British were called the Tommies because so many of them had the name Tommy. Tommies. Okay. And the Russians were called the Ruskies, and the Germans were called the Fritzes. That was something that American soldiers coined. Everybody seemed to have, the Germans seemed to have the name Fritz. The real name for them was the Hun. They were called the Hun. And the French were called the Poilus. The Poilu in France means big, hairy, ugly beast. So we'll get a picture of that a little bit later. But follow me. The first place we go into battle is, of all places, a place called Cantigny. So let's look at what Cantigny was all about. This was called trench warfare. Trench warfare. Okay, now picture this as a trench. This is what the wall, or one of the walls of your trench. And on the other side were the Germans, and they had a trench. And they were separated by maybe 200 yards, 300 yards at the most, and they went 465 miles between the English Channel and Switzerland. 450 miles of trenches. You can see we had to borrow, this is a French tank, that's a French automatic rifle, that's a British rifle too. We had to borrow. We weren't ready for this, as I said earlier.
Isn't 465 miles about the length of Illinois?
Yeah, I suppose that would be about right. Yeah, but you picture these things winding, because you couldn't have a straight trench, because if somebody jumped into your trench, they'd have a clear shot all the way through. That's why it kind of wended its wire around. But this in the middle was called no man's land. No man's land. And if you tried to say, hey guys, I'm going to just check out and see what's going on, bang, the sniper would get you from the other side. And of course we had snipers too, so, but you had to stay below the top of the fence. And keep in mind, these trenches were dug because what the two armies had created was something called stalemate. Stalemate, that's what. So here they sat, built these trenches, and they were very elaborate. And the reason why this was so important was that 80% of the casualties in World War I were caused by artillery. And the other, gas, by the way, carried a big part of the casualty list too. So let's go see what we built here.
It's all right.
Okay. Check out the barbed wire overhead as we go by. Yeah, that weapon that I pointed out, the semi-machine gun, that's what this is. It was called a show shot. It was terrible. If you were in sand or gravel or whatever, it would get into the floor and you automatically get a lockup. It was not a great weapon. Okay.
Go ahead, guys.
The soldiers gave this a pump.
They have those in battlefield.
I don't know.
Part of the DAR, pal. See the thing for walking hip fire, that's where you put the buttstock in. And we're up, it's a German. Wait for it to move. So you know the Germans. The wires so you can't jump in the trench.
The leader of ours, John J. Pershing, said, if you can't fight as an American army, you go on draft. And we fought well at this battle of Cantigny. And from then on, we didn't spend much time in the trenches. We were on the go. We were the first army within the Allied picture to really want to get up and go. Stay out of those traps. It was a trap. It was a killing trap. Okay. But you should know a couple of things about this life in the trenches. There it is. I use this when I'm with the kids, but well, this guy right here. Life in the trenches was terrible for a lot of reasons. One, everybody had lice. Everybody on both sides had lice. And the trenches were overrun by this guy up here. What's that? He grew to be as big as cats. They had a protein diet. What was the diet? People, soldiers who were trapped out there in no man's land. You couldn't, if you tried to go get your buddy, the sniper was going to get you. So if they were seriously hurt out there, they perished. And the rats, boop, 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 gone. So it wasn't pretty. Life in the trenches was awful. It was awful. But when the United States comes in on the side of the Allies, it flips the balance of power to the Allies. Now they got a 1.5 million army sitting there, and the Germans know that, and they can't replenish because they're out of manpower. So they want to go home. They want to end this thing and just walk home. Well, first of all, we do grant them an armistice. We say to the Germans, yeah, we'll pick a day, we'll pick a time, and we'll end the fighting between the two of us. And that was done on a special day. And the kids sometimes get the day off because of, it was called Armistice Day. And 9/11, in our history too, 9/11, and 1918. But most of the soldiers get to go home. The American Army and the 1st Division stay in Europe for an additional 3 and kind of keep tabs of the Germans. And while that's going on, the Treaty of Versailles is coming into being. And the Treaty of Versailles was in 1919, and of course it favored the winning side, the Allies. And what we tell the Germans is, we want a lot of money. We want billions of dollars. And the Germans say, what? We don't have any money. We spend it all on the war, just like you did. We can't pay that. And it takes a wheelbarrow money to buy a loaf of bread in Germany. So they've got this thing, famine going on. It's chaos in Germany. And one guy steps forward, and he becomes the Chancellor of Germany. He says, I'm going to avenge that war. I'm going to avenge the Treaty of Versailles. It wasn't fair. They started the war, meaning us. Not true, but anyway. So who is this terrible guy? Who is this guy with a mustache that becomes I heard Adolf Hitler's name. He becomes the Chancellor of Germany, and the World War I was always called the Great War, and it was also supposed to be the war to end all wars because it was so awful. Now, we start marching on to battle again. The same British and French, United States, and we'll move a little, get a little better picture of what's going on here. But who's the president of the United States at this time? FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was a president for 13 years, I might add, and that's never going to happen again. So, and there's a cataclysmic event that happens in the Hawaiian Islands that brings us into this war. This war started when Germany attacked Poland, and on the Pacific side, what happened? What happens in this naval base in Hawaii? Okay. Okay, Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor brings us, the Germans declare war. Of course, the Japan, they've already declared war by bombing our fleet in Pearl Harbor. But the Germans declare war against the United States, and we're dragged into this. Again, another European war. This time for a better reason than the first one was. But in the first place we go to become soldiers all over again is in Fort Devon, Massachusetts. So follow me. Okay, picture this as your barracks. This is your barracks. This is where you're going to become, hopefully, a soldier all over again. Has anybody here been in the service? You were?
3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, and the 16th MP Brigade.
But I was in the Marine Corps too, but I never went overseas. I never shot anything in anger. Anyway, I'm very proud of spending what little time I spent in the Marine Corps. But here we are. This is where we're going to learn to be leaders. Don't forget, if somebody becomes a casualty, let's say your master sergeant becomes a casualty, you got to jump up and say, hey, I'll take over, I'll take over. So it gets a lot of leadership. Discipline is another thing. All these tactics are meant to keep you alive in combat. So the first place we go to battle is in North Africa. Now, I don't have a map to work with there, but let's call this the desert. The desert, and the British and the Canadians and their allies have been in the desert fighting the Germans and Italians for some time before we come in 1942. We come in at a place, and again, we tip this balance of power to the British and the Canadians, and the Germans get trapped, but there's 150,000 of them who surrender at one time, raise their right hand, put a white flag up and say, hey, we've had enough, we're done. Well, what do you do when you get 150,000 prisoners in one day? One day. We sent them to the United States. Now, in that part of the war, there were POW camps all over the United States, including Illinois, including every place in Alaska and Hawaii. And we treated these guys really terrific. I mean, they had picnics. There were no barbed wire around any of the top camps, any of the barracks. And we treated them to picnics. And we had dances for them. Young ladies would come in from the town around the POW camp. And a lot of them married American girls. So they became citizens. That seems strange to me. Somebody in politics would say, none of that, none of that, they're the enemy. Well, they were the enemy, but they made some good friends along the way too. Okay, the next place we go into battle is in Sicily. And let me, if anybody's got to get through, that would be a good time. Sicily, the Operation Husky. We're going to invade Sicily because the Germans didn't surrender and funneled themselves into Sicily. Now, the real story about Sicily is the two generals. George Patton was one. And on the other side, the other guy was the British generals. And the two of them were opposites.
You got some good stuff right now.
Oh yeah,
They hated
see
each
that.
other.
So yeah, I had to take a peek.
His name was Bernard Montgomery, and he was disheveled. He had, as opposed to Pat, who was a polished guy, and he had a silver helmet, and he had the three stripes on the lapel, and he wore riding pants with riding boots, and he carried two pearl-handled revolvers on the side. And of course, the other guy was basically a slob. He was also very conservative. Patton was a go guy. Montgomery was a let's take a look at this. Let's see how this is going to work out before I make it go. Well, they have this bet that who gets to the point. If you look at Sicily, who gets to here first? And the Americans won the bet by a day and a half. So now they really hate each other. They really hate each other. So the next time we go into battle, we leave Sicily and we go back to England for training. Now we're going to be trained for one specific reason, and that's the landing at Normandy. What is that? There's two iconic battles that we fight in Europe, and one, of course, is D-Day. We'll talk about the second one, which will be the Battle of the Bulge a little bit later. But D-Day, we've not been in landing back before. There's a whole different. Who was the Marine Corps guy?
Right here.
Well, yeah, you know, sometimes that's not fun if you're. I always used to hold the net and I go, whoop, whoop, whoop. Anyway, so the first division is assigned to land on a beach called Omaha Beach. And if you think about it, because the cliffs were there, we were going to run onto our Omaha, and the Germans could fire down and be covered and recovered. And if you were running on the beach, you had to be this way. So you were almost 1,500 soldiers of the 1st Division are killed on the beach, basically in the first hour and a half of the landing. So it was tough. Now we're going to see a film on what D-Day was all about, how we trained for it, how we planted the dummy tanks and the and Patton, although he would have liked to have been in this battle, he isn't in this battle. He's back in England. Okay, we got a full house.
Yeah.
Well, there were 5 beaches that participated in this. One, the British had three beaches. The American Army had 2. The other one, besides Omaha, was Utah. They were adjacent, but they had probably about a 30-mile break between the two of the landing group. And you know, the Navy dumped a lot of soldiers off in exactly the wrong place. So they were automatically off by, sometimes as much as a mile. Didn't make any sense. Okay. Now you guys head in, grab a seat, and I'll push this start. And this is it's a 6-minute film. second landing. The first one, of course, was in North Africa. Put in by the Germans. And it was called the Atlantic Wall. And the general that participated in that was Rommel, Erwin Rommel. He was known as the Desert Fox. They had
Spring 1944. After a string of early defeats in the Pacific, the Allies are finally beginning to advance against the Japanese. In Europe, the war has dragged on for nearly 5 years, with millions dead. But the Allies are finally making progress here. They have cleared the Germans from North Africa, and are now slugging their way up the Italian peninsula. To the east, at a terrible cost of human life, the Soviets have turned and tide, and are slowly forcing the Germans into retreat. The fate of the entire war now rests upon a single day. The Allies are about to launch Operation Open, the largest amphibious invasion in history.
We wanted the Germans to believe
Open a new front in France and battle their way into Germany.
Land a little bit to the north of that.
The enemy knows full well the attack is coming. They just don't know when or where. In anticipation, the Germans have spent 2 years building the Atlantic Wall, a powerful defensive line made of millions of tons of steel and concrete, and countless mines. Thousands of German soldiers lie in wait, hoping to crush the Allies before they can get a foothold on the continent. The key to the Allies' success is surprise, and to this end, they've concocted an elaborate ruse. They've positioned thousands of fake tanks and aircraft in England, with the intention of fooling the enemy into believing the attack will be aimed at Calais. Meanwhile, an enormous German is being ready for a surprise attack farther south on 5 beaches in Normandy. The battle-hardened 1st Division is given the unenviable job of taking Omaha Beach, which lies at the crux of the multi-pronged attack. The plan is for Allied airstrikes and naval gunfire to first destroy most of the German defenses. The 1st Division's assault will then begin at low tide, when the German defensive barriers are visible above water level. Tanks will land first, followed by the infantry, and then engineers who will clear away mines and obstacles for the next wave of troops. Once on the beach, the men must somehow advance 500 yards through crisscrossing machine gun and anti-tank fire. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the invasion fails, the conflict in Europe could drag on for years, giving Germany time to win the war. On June 4th, General Dwight Eisenhower gives the go-ahead to launch the D-Day attack on June 6th. The countdown begins. The Allies have the element of surprise on their side. The 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions and the British 6th Airborne Division are first dropped behind enemy lines. The 1st Division is part of Assault Force O, commanded by Major General Clarence Hewlett. After several days spent waiting aboard transport ships, Assault Force O sets out across the English Channel. It is D-Day. 12 miles offshore, the troops scramble down rogue cargo nets into landing craft, 32 men per vessel. Hours pass as the vessels organize into assault waves before pressing forward. The pre-dawn sky this morning is dark and overcast. The sea is especially rough. The men are drenched by ocean spray. Many are seasick. Naval gunfire pierces the morning mist. The troops hear the drone of Allied bombers overhead and explosions on shore. A few bombs actually hit German defenses. The men's hearts race as Omaha Beach comes into view, and enemy machine guns spraying boats. The landing craft swing into line as the troops get their first glimpse of what lies ahead. The ramp droops. The men of the Big Red One spill out into waist-deep water and head straight into the jaws of death. They are the first wave onto Omaha Beach. The fate of the war lies in their hands.
Now, they don't make a big point out of having the Air Force, what they contributed, because the day was overcast, and they missed them. They had no clue where the targets would be, so they made little or no inroad into helping the First Division get on. So, whoa!
Oh, someone hit the button. As soon as I walk back, someone pushed the button. Apparently.
All soldiers,
Or it reset.
Okay, follow me over here. We'll circumvent this a little bit.
Oopsie.
when you're gonna attack.
You don't. Keep everybody guessing.
You fake it. You fake it. That's exactly what you do.
We're
You
cutting in
fake
front of
it.
you.
What's that?
We're cutting in front of you.
Go on, it's okay.
Thank you. Well, the battle plan was that was the plan. Get up and over that, and we knew, but we were looking at it,
Sometimes.
I forgot I was still zoomed in. That's a problem. Wonder why I was having so much trouble.
we want to make one more snap and try to turn this thing in their direction. And that is and 90,000 soldiers become very short period. Winter, and we're stuck here with these cotton uniforms. It was a real snafu on somebody's part not to provide winter weight clothes. This was a Sherman tank, and this was our battle tank in World War II. And it wasn't a very good tank, but we made 53,000 of these tanks. A new field Now, the war in Europe is slowly creeping to a conclusion. Russians have entered into Berlin, and this guy with the mustache who started this whole thing, he knows what the Russians would have done. And his wife, she was married to him, and they were only married for a day and a half. And so, they both were so, you think that the American Army is going to go home? Well, that's the case. We'll probably have to. Some of them have to go to the Pacific because the war here in the Pacific is still going on. But the 1st Infantry Division stays in Europe, and we become a deterrent to our new enemy, who really wants to get a little bit further on and get more property than they would probably be entitled to. So here we are, we're still in Europe, and we become soldiers that are in and around the trials of Nuremberg. So anyway, we have a new enemy, by the way. Let's talk about him somewhat. We'll get him over here. Who was the new enemy? Who was our president in the early 60s? Who's our new enemy? The Soviet Union is. And our president at this time in the Cold War is John F. Kennedy. Now, there's one event that you'd have to say is an iconic kind of event. It happens when the Russians, then the Soviet Union, put nuclear-tipped missiles in Cuba. It's only 90 miles from between the Keys and Cuba. Here's all these weapons, nuclear, and they're all aimed at major American cities, like Chicago. And I know you guys all aren't from Chicago, but certainly Chicago would have been one of those spots where we could now, had those weapons been fired, as John F. Kennedy kept saying, no, if you won't take them out, we'll come and get them. Well, that's kind of if they had fired, it could have been marked by not nuclear holocaust. This world might have come to an end. And I remember I was sitting in a fraternity house saying, gee whiz, this is starting to look a little dangerous, isn't it? But the Russians finally accede to Kennedy's demands, and they go home. But it came within 15 minutes of a nuclear war going on here. So, anyway, now there were a lot of skirmishes all through the globe in this period called the Cold War, and the one that probably affected Americans more than others is Vietnam. So we had trench warfare. Now we get a taste of jungle warfare. 50,000 soldiers become they die in this incursion into Vietnam. And no, we don't talk about Korea because the 1st Division never fought in Korea. So they were in Europe, being that deterrent. Almost said deterrent. Anyway, so we're going to take a little bit of a walk through the Vietnam jungles, and these were our two enemies. On the right, you got the North Vietnam, North Vietnamese regulars, and on the left, you have the Viet Cong. And these regulars really didn't enjoy that much success until the United States had left. No, you know, we just got up and left. And so we didn't win this war. We didn't win this war. But anyway, in 1973, it ended kind of with a whimper, and of course, the North Vietnamese just came in with their tanks and took command of Vietnam. So, what you guys were going to finish off this walk through the jungle. I want to show you. You guys have watched the movie there. Watch the movie. This was a very young army. Very young army that we were killed in Vietnam. And all these soldiers came into the army through the draft. Vietnam veterans came through the draft. At any one time, we had 1.5 million soldiers. And we lost 50,000. But even though you got your draft notice, you could say to your draft board that I don't want to go now, because they knew where we were going. I don't want to go. So I'll go next year. I'm in college. So leave me alone. Just leave me alone. Well, the irony of the whole thing is that you could get out of going. All you had to do is take a deferment and say, I don't want to go. Well, one guy took 5 deferments, and he became a vice president. So you think, gee whiz, how stupid is that? To make a man who didn't want to go where his American friends were. And the other one became a president. He took 5 deferments too. I won't mention it. No name. Okay, this ends our part of the battle. Now you're going to go over to the other side, and there's some